I'll now invite Fareed to come forward.
Thank you, Teresa. My name is Fareed Khan. I am the founder of the activist group, anti-racism activist group, Canadians United Against Hate, and I'm an active member of the Ottawa Gatineau Muslim community. We're gathered here today partly because we're in pain, but also because we're angry. Last Thursday, on May 27th, the remains of 215 Indigenous children were discovered on the grounds of the former Kamloops Indian Residential School in British Columbia. Some of those children were estimated to be as young as 3. When I heard the news, I was both deeply angry and deeply saddened at the same time. And given the public reaction and social media response over the last week, millions of Canadians feel the same way. This tragic revelation should not be shocking or come as a surprise to Canadians, because for decades, residential school survivors have been telling their stories of violence and atrocities they endured. These included stories of children who disappeared, children who were raped, children whose deaths they witnessed, and children who they were forced to bury. All Canadians need to mourn these children and the many thousands of other children who never made it home to their families. And Canadians need to stand in solidarity with residential school survivors, their families, and all Indigenous people for what the federal and provincial governments did and are doing to their communities and their society for more than 150 years. Canadians also must acknowledge that residential schools were part of a colonial and national policy of genocide intended to eradicate Indigenous cultures, languages, and communities. And while the last residential school closed in 1996, the intergenerational trauma endures, and anti-Indigenous prejudice and racism are far too common. As a nation, it's our duty to embrace the process of reconciliation and call on governments to commit the funds needed to make sure that it happens in a timely manner. Those here this evening and Canadians across the country can help make that happen by emailing the Prime Minister and MPs, calling on them to act now to ensure justice and accountability. Not only for those 215 children whose bodies were found in Kamloops, but for all Indigenous people in every corner of Canada. If you want to directly email the Prime Minister and demand his government uphold his often stated claim that Canada is a defender of human rights and his government is a friend to the Indigenous people, his email address is, easy to remember, pm@pm.gc.ca. I'll repeat that, pm@pm.gc.ca. The devastating abuses that took place in residential schools as a direct result of Canadian government policy included physical abuse, severe deprivation, and sexual assault inflicted on children who were cruelly ripped from their families. Canada's policies meant these children lost their language, their connections to family and community, and cultural knowledge and skills. And sadly, this continues today. Evidence of this is that Indigenous children are disproportionately represented in the child welfare system. First Nations children living on reserves receive less money for health care and education than other children across Canada, and the Canadian government has been fighting a Canadian Human Rights Tribunal order to compensate these children for years. And Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirited people experience unbelievably high rates of violence, which is a legacy of a history of anti-Indigenous hate and racism. People of Indigenous background are also far more likely to experience racism than any other minority community when dealing with public services like the police and healthcare. And when it comes to large-scale industrial projects like pipelines, dams, or mines on Indigenous land, governments have frequently approved them without the consent of Indigenous communities or recognition of their laws and knowledge of their land. As Canadians, as human beings, It is up to us to say to our government and broader society, no, no more. We will no longer accept this, and we will not be silent anymore when we see it happening. The reports of the Royal Commission on Aboriginal Peoples, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, the National Inquiry into Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women and Girls, plus various reviews by the United Nations and other international human rights groups, have revealed historic and present-day abuses against Indigenous peoples in Canada. Reports of each of these commissions and studies have collectively made thousands of recommendations to Canada calling for justice and accountability for Indigenous peoples. Very few of the recommendations have been implemented by the Canadian and provincial governments, and our government continues to drag their feet in response to calls for justice and accountability. Every Canadian today who benefits from living on this land that was stolen from the Indigenous peoples has a duty to ensure justice and accountability for the harms inflicted on them in this country. It should not take the tragic death or discovery of 215 dead children to motivate us to take action. But now that we are in this moment in history, I ask you to call on the Canadian government to implement these calls for Indigenous justice without delay, because it's the right thing to do, it's the just thing to do, and most importantly, it's the human thing to do.